President Trump appeared to have gone full mask off, admitting that the only way he's restoring aid to Ukraine is if Putin says so. I'm Paul, U.S. Army combat veteran. Let's break down the latest insanity from the White House. So this is the top story, right? Trump signals possible restoration of aid under certain conditions. But here is the thing, is that one, they're saying he has temporarily suspended military aid. Now, they are using that term because the temporary nature of it, it is illegal for him to permanently suspend military aid because Congress allocated money to that function. And he is, as the president, unable to suspend military aid to Ukraine. But that doesn't mean he isn't trying to screw Ukraine in every other way possible, right? For example, the United States has actually banned Britain from sharing any of its intelligence with Ukraine. This is something that doesn't cost the taxpayer anything because we gather this intelligence on Russia, and Russia is one of our enemies, FYI. We gather that intelligence, right, so that we can be prepared, so we're never surprised by our enemy's actions. And sometimes, if appropriate, we share that information with Ukraine. And Ukraine uses it to tremendous effect. It helps guide HIMARS strikes. It helps them understand when and where Russia is planning offensive operations. And the fact is that, again, it's stuff we're gathering anyway. So it's no cost to taxpayers. And yet the U.S. has banned the UK from sharing any of what they called releasable to Ukraine information. And the most important thing is that it's probably almost certainly true that the U.S. also has banned sharing information with Ukraine, but it's a federal crime in the United States, of course, to release that sort of highly classified intelligence, right? Presumably, if it's not releasable to Ukraine, then it's definitely not releasable to anyone else. So this is a really big shift and a sign, again, that this isn't about the administration. You know, if they're going to argue that this is about fiscal responsibility, we know that's BS because, again, it costs nothing to send an email or over a secure channel that says, hey, listen, Ukraine, here's a list of where we think Russia's next offensives are going to be based on our satellites, our human intel, whatever it is. But that's not the real story here, is that the suspension of both physical and intelligence aid the White House has said that it's only possible if peace talks are arranged and confidence-building measures are implemented. Right? Now, I want to make this very clear that the only way to have peace talks is for two parties to sit at them. This is how these things work. Two parties have to sit to be a peace talk. Otherwise, it is just an empty meeting. And so the fact is that these peace talks will only happen if one condition is met. And that is Vladimir Putin approves. If Russia chooses not to send anyone, there is no peace talk. And the fact that the rest of the United States, I'm not mad at this point that Trump does it. Trump advocating for Russia, Trump aiding America's enemies, Trump not really giving a shit about the country or its security seems to be just the default this administration. What I'm mad at is that everyone around him is trying to pretend like this is a good idea while recognizing privately that this is playing into the hands of the United States enemies. And it feels like I'm in crazy town, and I will show you why. It's because of this. Right? You may notice that June 2024, guys, this wasn't forever ago. This was 8 months ago, okay? This wasn't never. The Ukraine held a peace summit. This was a real attempt at a peace venue. And the important thing is that everyone, especially Russia and Russian allies, were invited. It included China. It included Russian allies like Brazil, countries with strong relationships with Russia, like India and South Africa. And the fact that all of these countries were here, right, as part of this, and this was a year-long series of meetings that, again, Russia was invited to each and every one. And in each instance, Russia said, no, we refuse, right? In fact, the day before the summit was held, Vladimir Putin presented his own proposal that said that simply, we propose that Ukraine just withdraws from the contested regions, right? And that they had to officially abandon plans to join NATO, and then they would sit down and meet for peace negotiations, which, again, he said, from our side, literally the moment the ordered ceasefire to begin negotiations will be issued, right, we will do this immediately, right? And this is, again, a obvious farce, because Russia could have attended the meeting, said the same things, and that would have been considered a first volley in a peace negotiation. So then why didn't they? Well, the answer is they knew that their first volley amounted to total capitulation and achieving all of their objectives. And by the way, that likely would have not done anything because if you don't care, if Russia's goal was to have a buffer zone between them and NATO, if that was really a concern, then the fact that Russia would control the entire eastern border of Ukraine should be sufficient, and it shouldn't worry him about Ukraine joining NATO. If you already get your buffer state, why do you care what NATO does on its border? Why is that important that Ukraine not be the remaining parts of Ukraine under this Russian proposal for a ceasefire, right? Why would you want to make sure? Why would it be really important that you make sure that the remainder of Ukraine isn't part of a defensive alliance, right? The NATO alliance is purely defensive. It doesn't engage in offensive actions. So why would that be a problem? You got the territory you wanted. It only makes sense, again, if the thief is saying, listen, the only way I'll stop breaking into your house is if you don't install a single lock on your door. Well, you'd say, you're obviously planning on breaking into my house again, because a condition of our agreement is for me to remove my locks. So, again, for Trump to sit there and say this event that happened 8 months ago, in which Russia was invited, Russia was welcome to take a seat, where Russian allies joined, right, where a framework for a peace agreement was outlined, right? All the framework said, it was actually very, very generous, was what emerged was essentially a 10-point peace formula where Ukraine said, listen, here are the 10 things that we want to see that's our official position, right? So, again, to sit there and say that there wasn't peace or that Ukraine isn't interested in peace is an obvious and transparently exposable lie. And so what then is the real idea? The real idea is that the U.S. wants to signal to Putin, it's the only explanation I can think of, to tell him, hey, man, you can beat the shit out of Ukraine as much as you want. We're not going to help them, right? It's like banning a fighter from throwing a punch and then saying, hey, the fight's not going to end until both parties agree that there have been enough punches thrown. Well, if one of the fighters has their hands tied behind their back, by definition, the other fighter isn't going to just stop out of the goodness of their heart. They're only going to stop when they feel they have beaten their opponent sufficiently. So this is just so transparent, so obvious, so blatant that it's beyond the pale. And, I'm going to ask you to do a couple of things. The first, always, is subscribe to the channel. The second, though, is I'm going to link in the description to write your representative. Now, right now, there have been so many things that the government has done that have fucked people. From cutting VA staff, right? It's harder for me to get an appointment at my local VA, to spiking all those grants, shutting down even agencies like NOAA, which is a problem because obviously, if you're a ship, say, bringing goods into the United States, now you just don't know what the fucking weather is. Those are NOAA satellites. So there's so much stuff that actually supposedly all congressional offices are being completely overwhelmed with phone calls and emails. But you should keep doing it. Keep blasting them. They should know that they have to find a spine. They have to use the magic words, whether it's a Democrat or Republican, especially Republicans. I'm in a Republican district. They have to use the magic word. And the magic words are, the president is wrong about this. That is something that they are all too cowardly to do. They are indistinguishable from being having a 12-year-old. Simply putting him in a suit and saying, when the president tells you to press a yes button, you press the yes button and you'll get a fucking toy, right? Because if that's all you do as an elected representative, why do we even pay them? Why even care who's elected if they're just going to be an empty suit that supports the person in charge, right? That is how the Russian state Duma works. Putin takes people that he likes, he instructs his party or allied parties to make them the candidate, and then they ensure that candidate wins, and Putin gets to guarantee a job and a public role for his allies. And that is... I have no other explanation for what the Republicans are doing. Again, being completely unable to even advocate for their constituents in any meaningful way. So keep writing to them. Again, that link's in the description. Of course, the third thing, as always, I appreciate it. If you guys are interested in getting the more honest product, right? Elon Musk, in addition to being just a dirtbag, right? And kind of dumb. I say this, yeah, he's pretty dumb, but he's pretty visionary. That's like, it's his flaw and his greatest gift. But the problem is he's prone to lying, just like he lied about Social Security, and he lied about his stupid trucks, right? You notice that every year Elon Musk said that next year you're going to get full self-drive. Your Tesla still can't drive itself. But you know what I say? I have Strike Gum. And guess what? From day one, I told you, Strike Gum has all the caffeine of an energy drink. And I have been true to that. Thousands of customers, over 10,000, and the hundreds of reviews on Amazon and on strikegum.com have confirmed this is the best way. This is superior to an energy drink in every way. Zero sugar, made in the USA, veteran owned, does exactly what it says it's going to do. Give you all the caffeine of an energy drink in every single piece with no sugar crash. So check it out, strikegum.com, right? And support me because obviously, do you think with this message, sponsors are beating down the door? No, dude, but that's okay. Because guess what? I get to make something that I know is great. And that's more than you can say about the fucking Cybertruck. So anyway, guys, that is really all I had. That's the only story. I don't have any other stories because none of them matter. Trump gave a speech last night, and I'm sure you're like, well, what do you think about it? The answer is, I don't care. I don't care because Trump's words are meaningless. I'm sorry, they just are. Remember all the things he said, how he was going to stand up to Putin. I told him, I was like, listen, if tough guy Trump shows up and puts the screws to Putin and gets him out of Ukraine, good. And so, but he's shown up, right? Mr. Putin's afraid of me. Putin is terrified of me. Mr. Tough Guy, that was all a lie. So now, right, why do you think I'm going to listen to the guy talk, right? Because it's worthless. Whatever he says is absolutely worthless. And what he does is what matters. But what he does is, of course, he is simply tying the hands of a boxer and then letting his opponent decide when the fight ends. Anyway, that's all I had. Thank you to James Durling, Steve Moran, Doug Beck, Alan Knutson, Bastian Himmerling, Brian Kelly, Dale McCombs, James Hola, Henry Roussier, all of our Lieutenant tier members. All you guys are the ones who support me over on combatvetnews.com. Thank you guys, and I'll see you in the next one. Cheers.